Hello, everybody. Welcome to Truth Proof. And how are we all today? Good, I hope. Are you okay, Les?
Yeah, and looking forward to a great show with our guest who we've had on before. But yeah, got a wealth of information, so I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely, yeah. Like you said, I think it's about 2 years since we had Paul Dore on. He'll know probably exactly, but it's a few years since. And yeah, really interesting. He's got a broad sort of brush strokes of knowledge. So get your questions ready, people, for Paul, because he's an interesting guy. He's not going to concentrate. Tonight, we're not going to have somebody who's going to concentrate on UFOs or cryptids. He's just got an interest in everything, and he's really open-minded and sort of laterally thinking. Like, he's not everything's going to be cryptid related or UFO. He'll say it as he sees it, which I like. Go on.
Yeah, and just at the top of the show, please, if you've not considered, please consider subscribing to the channel, because we found out that half the viewers are only half the viewers are subscribed to this channel. So obviously, yeah, if you come on, please, consider subscribing.
Yeah, give us a bit of support. And just to jump back to Paul, he's bushcrafter and absolutely expert in what he does as regards the bushcrafting and his leather work. He's told me earlier he's not been doing as much, but crafts leather and just interested in all things unexplained. And no great title for Paul. I'm not going to say author, lecturer, but a man who can certainly compete and stand with most people head and shoulders above a lot of people who claim all these fancy and extraordinary claims. So I'm looking forward to speaking to him. But let's just have a quick look in this chat. We've got over 100 people in here. And we've got Karen Behrman, Simon Riley, Alien UK, Al Durham. Good to see you, Al. Sober Carper, Tony Worrell, Margaret Webster, Ivan Stead, Craig, Wendy. Good to see you last night, Wendy. Really enjoyed a bit of company with you on Cliff Tops and Steve. It were great. Zero Dawn, Linny will be in, Sam Shelley, Mrs. Linny, Mia Girl, Dragonborn, Blue Carrot TV. Yeah, it's Blue Carrot. This guy went to speak, and I remember looking at his YouTube. It was quite entertaining. Stargazer Eternal. Let's have a look. Bill 49s. Let's have a look. Deb Shaw. Good to see you, Deb, at weekend. And we're going to just close that down for a bit. We'll have a few more names. Oh, Zeno's there. Mag Sue. Tracy McKay, Diane Farrell. Paul says Christine is going to close it down. And then Bob Brown, just seen Bob. Bob had a strange experience the other day. We might touch on that maybe tonight, if not Sunday, Bob. Jackson Hills, Martin Abbas. And I've got to stop. And let's just get our guest on, Les. Hello, Paul. How are you?
Hi, Paul. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, you?
Yeah, it's been a while since you were last on here, but I know last time I didn't have loads to do, so I hope we have a repeat performance. And what you've been up to since we last met?
Well, I've changed jobs, so I'm doing a completely different job now. I'm actually working 2 jobs, but I'm doing a completely different job now. So I'm not teaching the bushcraft anymore, because I think the problem is with the inflation and the cost of living and everything. No one's got any disposable income, so a lot of sort of craft work and courses and hen parties and things like that I've took a bit of a dip. So I've backed out of that and gone back to a real job. So I'm working on a building site now, which is a new experience, because it's something I've never done before. But it's all good. It's all good.
It will be. And I think I said just before we came on, because I've not seen you for over 12 months, that you've dropped a bit of weight with this newfound job, haven't you? Which is brilliant. You'll be fitter.
A little bit,
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. It's hard work, yeah.
But we spoke about many things last time you were on, and we've spoke face to face about lots of strange and unusual things and things that have got explanations as well. Because I know that we all should do it. That's as a whole. That's what we all should do. We've got to look for the logical and the things that make sense before we think, well, this fits into realms of paranormal. But one thing we never touched on last time you came on, which is it 2 years since? It's got to be, hasn't it?
I'm not 100% sure. I've listened back to the stream a few times, but I didn't take any notice of the date, so I couldn't tell you. But something in my head tells me it was only last year.
Really?
It might have been the year before. I can't remember.
No worries.
So many things have happened.
Well, what we never touched on, and what I'm going to talk about, is the Wycombe Forest experience that you had with a few of your friends when you went camping in the forest. And I mean, you take as long as you like. You just walk us through that if you like. And remember, people in chat, let's have some questions in capital letters for Paul, because this'll be interesting. I mean, I've told it, but there's nothing ever as good as the person who experienced it firsthand telling the story. So, do you mind walking us through that?
No, not at all, mate. Not at all. In fact, I kind of owe you a little bit of an apology, because listening back to the stream from last time, I could tell you were trying to sort of push me to talk about it, and I was reticent to talk about it because obviously you'd filmed me for the new documentary.
Yeah,
and I thought, well, I don't want to go on there and give everybody a spoiler because it's going to be on the documentary. But afterwards, I felt really bad because I'd not gone into it, and I thought, maybe I should have. So it's played on my mind a little bit since the last time. So I'm glad I've got an opportunity to go into it now, because it was quite an interesting experience, although it didn't seem so at the time. But sort of reliving it back and talking to you and talking to other people about it, it was quite a bizarre event. I can't even remember what year it was. We did, the last time I met up with you, we did actually pin the date down. I think it might have been 2015. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. I think so. So maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And four of us we'd gone up to Wycombe Forest. We'd gone out for the weekend camping, as we often did. The area it's forestry commission, so again, it's pine, it's larch, it's sort of mixed coniferous woods for timber sort of idea. We'd been up there a couple of times before. We decided to go a little bit deeper into the forest this time. We stayed over for 2 nights. And in the actual woods where the trees are planted, they're kind of planted on like a little bit of a hill. So you get these dips in between the trees, like a furrow. They're probably about 3 or 4 feet deep. So we'd sort of set ourselves up on the high points, and in the furrow in the middle, we'd sort of put our area to light a fire. We'd got up there the Saturday morning, and we were sort of pottering about as you do, setting up camp and things like that, gathering firewood and stuff, and just having a chat, sort of catching up with everybody else, what they've been up to. And out the corner of my eye, I kept seeing like fleeting shadows, like something darting behind a tree really, really quickly. But you're in a new place. You sort of, you're seeing things you're not used to. I kind of put it to the back of my mind, and I thought it's got to be something natural. It's got to be somebody either walking past or a bird sort of flitting between the trees or something like that. So I'd sort of not mentioned it. I kept it to myself, and it kept happening throughout the day. So just the corner of my eye, I couldn't make out any shapes or anything, just fleeting black shadows. And I mentioned it to one of the other guys, Mark, and he just looked at me, and his face was pale. He was like, "Are you seeing that as well?" So I said, "Well, yeah, I am seeing that." And then one of the other guys came over and he's, "What you on about?" So he mentioned it, and it turns out we'd all been seeing this thing. We'd all been seeing these shadows flitting between the trees really quickly.
And this is on normal daylight. This is daylight.
This was just during the daytime. Yeah, this was probably, I think we probably mentioned it about 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I think it was. From what I remember, it was summertime, because I think I'd only taken a wool blanket out to sleep in with me, so it must have been pretty warm. So I don't think the sun would have set probably about 9 or 10 o'clock, something like that, quite late. So unbeknown to me, everybody had been seeing this thing or these things, and nobody had mentioned it. But we'd sort of mentioned it, and everybody was aware. And then every time one of us saw something, we were shouting out and saying, "Just seen it again, just seen it again." Do you know what I mean? And one of the other lads who was with us, Gary, was just like, he's just like, "Well, I don't really know. I think you're just seeing things. I think you're just seeing things." But he was seeing it himself. So, he can't deny that he was seeing it. He just didn't think it was what we thought it was. You know what I mean? The entire experience was, it wasn't frightening. There was no sort of fright there or terror there. It was more like we were kind of excited, because it was like, "Well, what's going on? Do you know what I mean? What is this? What's this?" So something stalking us. There's something there, and it was almost childlike, like it had a sense of curiosity, like it wanted to see what we were up to. And it just, nothing really sort of happened during the day from that point onwards. It was just there when we kind of let it do its thing, and we got over it. And then night fell, and obviously, because it's starting to get dark, we didn't see any shadows or anything like that. And we were sat, 3 of us were sat, me and Mark and Ray, we were sat round the fire. Ray was kind of sat off to one side of me and Mark. And we were chatting away. And all of a sudden, Ray just jumped up and shouted, "Fucking hell." And I was like, what? We thought he'd been stung or something, had bitten him or something. He said, I've just felt a hand grab my collar and twist my collar. And he did it to me, and he said, you know how when you can feel the knuckles in the back of your neck, like actually twist and tighten up and push the knuckles into your neck. And he swears blind to this day that something grabbed him and it actually had a hand and he could feel it. Now, me and Mark were facing Ray. We didn't see anything. There was nothing there. But it's the only time I've ever seen him scared. The guy used to be a bouncer, he was a doorman, and he's a big lad, and nothing phases him. Nothing phases him. He goes off to Mexico and the third world by himself.
I've just written Mexico down. I was going to touch on that as like a reference to his character.
He does. He's been all over by himself. Nothing phases him. He goes camping by himself sometimes for 3, 4, 5 nights at a time. Absolutely nothing phases him. He's not scared of anything. That's the first time I've ever seen him. And it was almost, I mean, it was a little bit too dark to see, but I could almost imagine him just going white as a sheet. It was absolutely shaking. He was absolutely terrified. Until he sort of, and then obviously, because me and Mark had just gone, well, what? There's out there, what? And then he said he'd realised that there was nothing there, and he almost kind of instantly just calmed down, which was also bizarre in itself. But yeah, so I mean, I don't know whether the two events are actually linked, but in our mind, because they happened on the same day, we'd put them together. Now, interestingly, Ray said he wasn't just seeing shadows fleeting between trees; he was seeing full-bodied apparitions,
right?
Which none of the rest of us saw. We just saw fleeting black shadows, like glimpsed out the corner of your eye. He said he was seeing things moving between the trees, full-body apparitions, face on. So whether that show was just for him, and the reason he was grabbed is because they'd sort of marked him out for something particular, I don't know. But it's an odd one. And other than Ray being sort of terrified for that split second, there was no real sort of sense of malevolence. There was no sense of fear. There was no immediate sort of desire to get out of the place or anything like that. It was just calm and normal. It was almost like we were being just, there were spectators and they were just sort of watching what we were up to.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing, sorry, Paul.
No, I was just saying, when I spoke to Ray about it, and obviously you as well, Ray, were there, and you might actually just be leading on to this. He said that the full blown figures, he didn't even know whether there were more than one because they were moving so fast at times.
Yes. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I can't verify that because I didn't see anything like that, and I don't think any of the other lads did as well.
No,
I think we just saw like fleeting shadows. So, but yeah, I mean, he's always said that, and he's always sort of he's never really changed his story. Do you know what I mean? He's always said that that's the case, and it's not. I mean, I've known these lads for a lot of years, and Ray is the most down to earth, honest person you could ever meet. He's absolutely a man of no ego. He's got no reason to tell.
He's very quiet, isn't he? He's real
very quiet.
Quiet kind of fella. I know I've met him a couple of times, haven't I? And he comes across really quiet and deep. And when he'd seen it, he said to me, and you've just carbon copied what you've said, but he said at first he felt the knuckles. Did he ever say whether they were cold? Did he say there were a temperature with these knuckles?
Do you know what? I've never asked him. Asked him. That's an interesting one.
Because there's obviously a physical to pull it. Because he said it pulled me back, and I jumped up. I'd pulled forward and jumped up. And it must have been a real shock. That and I don't know whether we're going to touch on it. The fact that you were close to burial mounds.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Actually, it's it was only when we'd got home on the Sunday that I was having a look on the map as to where it was, and it turns out that it was literally smack bang in the middle of a row of about nine Neolithic burial mounds. And the funny thing was, we'd found one of them during the day, but they were so small. I mean, you came and you looked at them, Paul. You filmed them for a short, didn't you?
Yeah.
They're so small that you almost couldn't even think they were burial mounds. No. They're tiny. They're literally maybe 3 feet high, if that.
That's right. Yeah.
They're really small.
And you were. I think the closest ones to where you were camped were called. If anybody wants to look on a map, I think they were called the Three Tremblers, weren't they?
I think they are. I think they're a little bit closer towards the main road, but they're part of a chain. They're part of a chain. I think.
In fact, they are. They're on the road.
Yeah,
they were on the logging road. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. But it's fascinating. So and that probably. Would that be Ray's one and only experience of anything while you've been out there camping?
Oh no, I don't know. Did he mention to you about the noise he heard on Jugger How Moor?
No, and I've stayed on there with Chris Wright.
It was very bizarre. He did the Lake Wake walk, and obviously towards the end of it, towards Ravensky, you go through Juggerhow Moor. And he'd said he was walking on the evening, it was probably 8 or 9 o'clock, but because it was summer, it was really bright. It was light skies. And he said he could hear something like a drone buzzing him, sort of flying towards him and buzzing off and coming back. And he actually recorded the sound and he played it to me. But he said there was nothing there. He said there was nothing in the air. He said I could hear it really close, like it was flying past my head. He said, but there was nothing. I couldn't see anything. He said it wasn't dark. It was light enough to see anything in the sky. He said there just wasn't anything there.
And it's pretty open up there, isn't it?
It's pretty open, yeah. I mean, I didn't know whether it might have been one of these, these tiny little drones that the military use, because it's not far from Fylingdales, but he swears blind. He said for the sound I heard, for how close it would have been to me, he said even if it was 2 inches long, I'd have seen it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's
a
lot
nothing. Really, I'll have to try and find the file with the sound.
Yeah. The drone kind of, it fits in with something man-made, doesn't it? But there's a lot of folklore up there as well, isn't there? The big black dogs and the bagest and all sorts of things up there. We camped right on the edge of Juggerhow, looking over the woodland or the forest, and what a night that was, because you can see all mist up at top of trees and everything. It was really, really special. So you can't replicate it. You can't even describe it until you've been up there, can you? And you've done loads more wild camping than me. It's
an amazing area. I mean, for the time that me and Ray spend up there, we have periods where we'll go up every week. You spend a lot of time at Bempton, and we probably do the same up at Howard and places like that. And we'll sometimes go up every Saturday night and drive around and just walk out into the woods. I mean, we'll park the car and just go off for a 3 or 4 miler and just walk out into the woods in the pitch black sort of thing. So we spend a lot of time up there, and it just shows you, I suppose, how rare these experiences actually are. That we've only really had the one experience, and I've been camping up in the moors since, God, I think I was 18. I'm 50 now. 32 years, and I've had one experience really out there in 32 years. So,
and you weren't looking for it. You never expected anything like that, did you?
No,
but which makes it kind of special. But just to stay with that Wycombe Forest experience, we're having an experiences on those cliff tops at the moment, Paul, with something that I don't know whether you'd call it a shadow being. I don't know what the correct word is for it. We've all seen it, and as close as last night, and I see Wendy's in chat. Wendy came up with her husband. I'll not go into detail, Steve, unless I'll not go into detail about you, but she came up with her husband who was very skeptical, and he's open enough to tell us that, but he's decent enough not to roll his eyes and tell us we're nuts. He's open to the idea that there could be something, but in his words, unless I see it myself, I don't believe it. Well, that's fair, isn't it? And last night, and we'll probably do this again on Sunday in a bit more detail, last night when we left the cliff tops, and there were me, Linny, Pete, Wendy and her husband, Mark, and somebody else, I think. But anyway, regardless, we left the cliff tops. They were behind us because he'd not come dressed for occasion, really, and it was a bit cold. And it went on the very top of the stand. It sort of dips down. It's a bit warmer, so they were stood there. So as we left, and I turned around, I says, "They'd only got a little torch." I says, "You okay there?" And he's just looked behind him, and he says, "Where've they gone?" I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "There was somebody walking outside of me. I was aware of them in my peripheral vision. I just saw the black shape of the legs." And you might not want to, Wendy, but if you do, just back me up on this, because it really shook him up because there was nobody there. But we've all seen it, and Linny's in chat. Linny was with us. We've all seen this. We don't know what it is, but we're not breaking new ground, Paul, because the fishermen, Andy Barmby and Mick Sigson, fishermen that have been up there for like 50 years fishing. Some of them, they call it the ghost of Big Railings, and they've all seen this dark shape moving about on cliff tops. So they refer to it as a ghost. Maybe it is. We'll sort of fit it into what we want to believe, kind of thing, won't we? Or what the narrative that we're wanting to go. What did you feel it was in Wycombe? What did you think it was?
I obviously we sat and discussed it, and we didn't wonder if maybe it was something that was guarding the mounts,
yeah,
or something that was related to the mounds. But I mean, we had no real evidence for that. It
No.
just kind of it just seemed plausible at the time, if you know what I mean.
Did,
The strange thing is, we've been up there a lot of times since. I mean, the time we went up there and you came and filmed us, we'd probably only been up a handful of times, but now we've been up there a lot. Me and Ray were up there nearly every week. We've done a lot of weekends up there since then, and we've never seen anything but just a nice peaceful experience. There's been nothing. So I just wonder whether whatever it was had come to have a look just to see
It's
whether
checking
we
you
were
out,
being
yeah.
ourselves.
Do you think there's a trickster element to it? Because I know that it were there almost on peripheral, and when it interacted with Ray, it was from behind. And I'm referring to cliff tops now, because everything that whatever we're dealing with up there, it's pushing people, just touching them on back and on lower legs, and everybody's just getting a glimpse of it. My daughter and her boyfriend came up, a partner came up, and he's not interested in any of this. As soon as we got in car, Dad, and she's not like, she's 40, she's not like 14. You know, I'm just saying, like, they're not teenagers. She said, Dad, sorry, Darren, tell me, Dad, what happened on cliff tops. They don't even live here. They live miles and miles away. They only come for a weekend. Oh, yeah, he says, I just turned around. I just saw somebody walking past me in darkness, and I put torch on. There's nothing there. It's happening all the time, but it's always on peripheral. It's always on outer edges of your perception. And that's like what that were, I think, weren't it?
There's definitely a trickster element to a lot of these experiences, isn't it? Whether it's sort of cryptids or UFOs or ghosts, there's something there that's almost like just mischievous, and if it wants to sort of just have a play around with you and sometimes sort of frighten you for kicks. Yeah, it's a common thread, isn't it? I mean, I don't really know why that would be the case. I don't know why it sort of would do that. You'd think it'd be a bit more, I don't know, a bit more serious, but maybe it's trying to tell us something. Maybe it's trying to say, well, I'm here and it seems strange to you, but don't worry, don't be frightened. I'm just going to jibe you a little bit.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And it did, and like just for that split second, probably a few seconds, Ray were frightened, but then he soon realised that whatever it was weren't going to hurt him. And like we said, and as you said it, you sort of beat me to it. This guy goes on his own backpacking through Mexico and all over the place, doesn't he? So that's no mean feat. I don't think I'd dare do that. And you must get yourself in a few. And he works his way through it, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I don't know if they'll be listening to this, but at some point he probably will.
So you'll probably play it on catch up because he'll be busy doing something tonight, I guess.
Absolutely. So I think this tells us there's a few questions. You all right, Les?
I've got one question. And Zeno, thanks for the question, Zeno. And thanks for everybody who sends the questions through every week. Always interesting to read out. Hi, I'll put on the screen. Let's have a look. Hi, Paul. Was there any eerie
silence
a few seconds before seeing it? Birds, insects all go silent, like an infrared sound. Tends to manifest a lot in wooded areas before our strangeness tend to turn on.
The so-called Oz factor. No, there wasn't actually, which was, you would kind of expect that, wouldn't you? There's not many beds in that woodland anyway, primarily for the reason that because it's pine trees, there's not a lot of undergrowth, which means not a lot of insects. So there's not a lot of food for the birds. They tend to stay on the periphery, but there was sort of the normal sounds of people in the distance and sort of dogs barking and the wind blowing through the trees and stuff. So there was no element of silence. I think if there had been, we would have all commented on that. But no, and I've never, in all of the things I've experienced, I've never had that. So that's something I'm yet to see.
Yeah. So when you was up there, Paul, how many people were in the group? Did you mention that at the beginning?
When there was four of us. Four of us, all together. Yeah.
Okay.
So the most skeptically minded one, did he change his tune when Ray started describing what had happened?
I mean, he admitted to seeing something, but it wasn't 100% sure. I don't think he wanted to take the leap. He's not particularly skeptically minded because we have some really broad-ranging discussions. I just don't think he was convinced that it was anything because, like I said, the initial experience was so tame and it was so sort of fleeting out the corner of your eye that you could be fooled for just making yourself think you'd seen a bird fly past, and it was just, just out the corner of your eye sort of thing. But I've noticed that of all the times we've been up there since, we've never had anything similar happen. So it can't have just been birds, because it happened too often. It happened too frequently on the day to all four of us. So there must have been something else present. You know
and if
what I
it
mean?
weren't, and obviously that kind of nailed it, or nailed something unusual when Ray gets pulled backwards. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ben 22 is asking to both Pauls, if money was no object, what bit of equipment would you love to have?
Well, I'll answer it first then, and we'll see what Paul number one has to say after that. For me, I'd just love a piece of land. And I don't need a bungalow on it or an house on it, just a porter cabin. I'd do one of them steel containers where you could put gear and let people come and just share environment and just observe. And I know is that equipment? It's somewhere to put equipment.
Okay.
Wow. God, if money was no object, I've got a list as long as my arm of stuff I'd like to do. But I think the one thing I would really like if money was no object would be a little cottage in that area, because it's not only the place where I've witnessed things. It's almost like my spiritual homeland is that area, because I spent so much time up there and I'm so familiar with the area that I just want to live there and be able to just go walking out there every day. So I think that's not a piece of equipment again, is it? But
no. But do you know?
To be honest, that more than anything else, I'd probably help the research and help me sort of get a grip on what's going on more than anything else up there.
You make a good point, and I think probably Les might think same. When you actually get up there, and we've been around Silfor and looked at these 12, 15 houses, and you think there's a community here, and it's like time stood still. We know that they've got to integrate, they've got to join the world if they want to go shopping, if they want to do things. But when they're up there, it's secular, isn't it? It really is stepping back.
Okay, I got a question.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Rhett, do you think they want to scare you to keep you away from the area? We don't know what's happened in the past out there.
Considering the fact that the experience wasn't actually scary and that they've not come back, I mean, I would have thought if they wanted to keep us away from the area, then it would have happened again and it would probably have got more intense. But we almost, like I say, we almost got this idea that it was curious and wanted to know what we were doing there. It was like it was being inquisitive, but not trying to frighten us away. I think if there is anything that can induce that level of fear out there and it wanted to keep you away, then surely it'd turn on all the tricks to get rid. And the fact that it never says to me that it wasn't trying to keep us away from the area. I have a feeling it was just checking us out to see who we were.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks to Jan and Andrew tonight for the super chat donation. Always welcome. And Stan Smith, I feel the black humanoid that stalks me was feeding off my fear. If it wanted to do physical harm, it could easily have done.
Yeah, and you might not know about Stan, but he's been on the channel, and spent an hour or two with us talking about various things. But Stan actually had a real scary encounter. But I agree with you, Stan. If it wanted to harm you, it could have done. So maybe it was just trying to drive you out of the area. I don't know. I know that we can only go on what Paul says, and he don't feel it wanted them out of area. We're more curious or inquisitive. But can you imagine, Paul, just briefly, and then we'll get to questions or whatever, these areas don't get much footfall, do they? So if there is some kind of, I don't know, nature spirit, ghosts, I don't know, some kind of entity, something that's got some kind of thought process, it would want to interact, wouldn't it? It would want to try, maybe to communicate. You can't imagine it just walking lonely amongst the woodland for the rest of its existence.
I suppose it probably would. Regarding the fear aspect, I don't know whether maybe it's a self-generating thing, and if you feel any fear, it maybe maximizes it or manipulates you into feeling more fear. Like you've almost got to give it something first before it can work on it. I mean, we're all very comfortable being out there, and there's very little. We know there's very little out there that can do us any danger, aside from getting a tick bite that gets infected or an adder bite, which is very rarely fatal. There's nothing out there. I mean, a friend of mine once said to me, "I don't know how you can go out there and be out there on your own." I said, "Well, why?" He says, "What happens if a mad axeman comes to get you?" And I just said to him, "Well, what makes you think I'm not the mad axeman?"
Yeah.
You know,
And there's probably more chance of that in town or in a built-up area.
this is exactly what I said to him, Paul. I said, "You've got no one's going to be out there in the dead of night looking for someone who might be camping to murder with a knife. They're going to go into a town centre where there's plenty of victims, and they're going to do it there. If they're dead set on killing someone, they're going to do it there where there's people."
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
so to me, it's a natural environment to be in, and I'll often go off wandering on my own in the dark and just go wandering, and it doesn't feel frightening to me. It feels like a place that I feel at home.
Yeah, thank you.
You know,
Martin Greaves, was there any orbs around the black shadow figures?
no.
No. And was he did you mention any change in temperature or anything like that, Paul, when you was there?
The only change in temperature would have been from the daytime to the evening, I suppose, when the sun went down and it got a little bit colder. We all put our jackets on.
Yeah.
Like I say, it was summertime, and I'd only taken a wool blanket to sleep in, and it was probably a little bit cooler than I was expecting, so I didn't get a great deal of sleep. I was a bit cold. But other than that, no, there was none of your classic sort of things you'd expect to experience from that sort of an encounter, which was strange to us, because I think we were all kind of expecting something stereotypical to happen, and none of it did. So I think that maybe just further reinforced in our own minds that whatever it wasn't anything that was that sort of terrorizing or exciting or yeah.
So you've been back loads of times since. Are you expecting it now? Do you think about it now? You must a little bit.
A little bit, yeah, but I've never had any experience. I mean, I've been back there by myself as well. It's not just sort of me and other people. I've been there by myself, and I'll spend full days there, and I'll be there from sun up to sundown sometimes, just pottering around and doing my own thing. And I do kind of, every time I'm out in the woods, I do think, oh, well, I see something. But I think the important thing is not to let it prey on your mind and become consuming, because I think there is a likelihood that if you let it sort of take over your mind, that you will experience it. I mean, the last time we talked, I spoke about I've got a belief that a lot of these things are self-generated. So I think your mindset in that area probably dictates the sort of experiences you're going to have.
Spot on. I would totally agree. Yeah, I can't agree more. Have you got more questions on this, Les? Because I want to move on.
I just got a question from myself. So the area that you was in there, we've got the burial mounds, Paul. Yeah. Did you, in your mind, ever kind of make a link between what you might have seen, shadow people, and the burial mounds?
We did. I think this is when I said that we thought it might have been whoever were the guardians of the mounds that had come to check us out.
Right.
But we never actually. I don't suppose we ever actually considered that they might have been the dead people that were buried there, because I think a lot of these burial mounds never really had anything in them or any bones in. I know they found some. I think the vast majority of them just tend to be empty or just have like ritual artifacts in.
Offerings, yeah.
So I had a feeling it was probably something. I mean, going back to the last time I spoke to you, we discussed about the occult and witchcraft and things like that. And to these people in the Neolithic period, this was their religion. It was what they did. It was the way they believed. And it's not a great leap to think that some medicine man or shaman in their tribe might have conjured some kind of dimensional entity to keep an eye on the tribe or on the lands, because the burial mounds a lot of the times are markers for territory. They were put in certain areas so people knew who owned that land and who lived in that land. So it's not beyond the realms to think that maybe some of these things are conjured from elemental energy, for want of a better word, to actually guard the tribe and guard the tribe's territory. So it could be that they're still doing their job all these thousands of years later.
Yeah, absolutely, just kind of tied to the land. Is there more questions, Les?
I'll be back a little bit later.
Okay. Well, we'll stay tied to land. And what are your thoughts then if any, on the Fae? And I'll just elaborate. We know that a lot of people think that they were some little Tinkerbell winged fairy, but in folklore they're not really depicted like that, and they say that they can shape shift and transform. So what are your thoughts that the Fae could be? Imagine you're in this woodland, you're not damaging it, because I've been in here and I see that you collect everything up, you don't leave any mess, the fires are put out but what about the people that come into these areas and they sort of trash them and rip trees up and smash things to bits? If you were some kind of elemental being that were tied to the land and you saw that happening to your home, and you'd got the ability to present as something else, something terrifying and fearful, could they be responsible? We're only saying ifs and buts here. What do you think to that thought?
They could be, but I think if you listen to people's experiences, especially, say for instance, the three guys that were in Broxer, there was no real evidence that they were doing any damage there.
No.
They'd just gone for an evening camping, and then they were approached by this thing. As far as the Fae, many people have reported encounters with the Fae that look like greys.
Yeah.
And I think there's an overarching element there that can maybe show different faces. I think that the Fae is just an old word for something that in a modern time we would call aliens.
I've just written down ancient aliens. I mean, you know what I mean? I know there's the TV show Ancient Aliens, but were the Fae the ancient aliens?
I don't know if we talked last time about. I know I mentioned psychedelics and hallucinogens, and I don't know if I mentioned about the fact that a lot of people that take DMT, which is the most powerful hallucinogen, actually experience visits from what you would call classic greys and classic mantid and reptilian beings. I have a feeling that every living organism produces this chemical DMT.
Yeah.
It's in everything that lives in small quantities, and it's the most powerful hallucinogen in the world. And now, ordinarily, your body just processes it, metabolizes it, but it's there. And I wonder whether, in certain circumstances, it can trigger, and you can kind of be shifted into a different reality, or see things that aren't necessarily there. I wonder whether what we call aliens, and what we call Fae, what we call ghosts, and what we call time slips and things like that are all literally just a sec.
Okay.
Are all literally elements of the same thing.
Yeah.
Just hang on. The power pack's going.
No worries. Take your time.
There we
There's
are.
no rush.
I just got a low power mode notification on my phone, and I got my battery pack plugged in, so I couldn't figure out why it wasn't charging, but it's on now.
Sorry.
It's sorted. So yeah. I just wonder whether they're not all elements of the same thing, and I think we've confused ourselves by giving them different labels, and across time, sort of people talking about the Fae in one instance and aliens in another. It's almost as if the face of these things changes according to our particular where we are in our culture. Do you know what I mean? It's like a culture tracking thing.
Do you know, I think a lot of people relate to that, and I'm sort of nodding my head and agree with what you've said there. It makes sense, doesn't it? We kind of fit it to the narrative that we're moving towards, or the position we're in at that time. The face of UFOs has changed. Yeah, it can't have done really, can it? But we've gone from the little classic flying saucer that people tended to see in 50s and 60s. And you know, I wouldn't say what's in vogue at the moment, because what we're observing up around Bempton, very infrequently, might I add, are these spheres of light. Is there something structured behind them? Is it just intelligent light? You know, plasma. It's difficult, isn't it?
It's a good question, and I don't know whether we ever will actually come up with an answer to it, because it seems to evade all explanations, doesn't it? Whatever we can think of in our conscious mind to explain it. Well, you know, there could be aliens from a different planet, yeah, but people's experiences with them show that they're not necessarily that, because people experience different things that would say that they're not. And we also know from our laws of physics that these craft would struggle to get here. If they are physical craft, how come we don't see them crashing all over the place? How come they don't do physical things? How come they can appear in the sky and then disappear and do incredible maneuvers? It doesn't make any sense.
It makes no
None
sense.
of it makes any sense.
People talk about these crash retrievals, and you think to yourself,
Mm.
if they're so sophisticated, and I know there's people that do think that we've retrieved lots of alien spacecraft, but I'd be asking the question, and I'm no scientist here, but are these like almost Trojan horses? They're giving us this technology, but maybe for their own benefit. I mean, they could be just massive spying technology that we've got no idea, that just observing what the top scientists in the world are up to. You know.
I mean, it's not beyond the realms of possibility to think that some of these crashes could actually be physical craft from another civilization, but some of the vast majority of the experiences are something else. Do you know what I mean? It could be that there are physical things, but it could be that the majority of them they're sort of psychic occurrences rather than physical occurrences.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And there's a bleed through it all, Paul, isn't there? You know, when you talk
Yes,
about
there is.
spiritualism and the mind speak and clairaudience, and then you talk about the cryptid, where these things allegedly can speak into your mind, the alien abduction, where these people are sort of semi-paralyzed and these beings are speaking into the mind. So it's the same kind of science.
Yeah. Well, like I said to you before, Paul, I mean, it's difficult to say is anything real or not real, because we struggle to even pin down what reality is. And I think if we were to ever find out what reality actually is, I think we'd have a massive shock. It'd be culture changing, because I honestly don't think that these four walls and this floor and me on this phone talking to you, I just don't think it even exists physically.
Right.
I think a lot of it is all to do with just a consciousness, and physical reality it's literally an illusion.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And a lot of the old spiritual documents that from civilizations, India, the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Native American Indians, from thousands of years ago, they all say the same thing. They all say it's an illusion, it's not real, it's just a game.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you think then that we're part of game? Well, we must be, but do you think we're almost being worked by some other external intelligence? I know all we can do is surmise and postulate, and we don't know, do we?
I think everything is in the game. Everything is in the game. I'm not just us. I'm talking blades of grass.
Mm.
Rocks. Everything that exists has got a certain level of consciousness to it. And I think everything that exists, everything that is aware, has a hand in influencing the game. So everything that is aware can help create the game. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes perfect sense. And you hear of certain types of phenomena or unexplained events occurring, and then when people look at the landscape and look at the rock structure, you've got, like you just said, rocks. We've got certain types of rocks and elements that are present, that are in the game, to obviously enhancing or making that possible in some way that we don't understand, obviously. But and you kind of touched on it earlier. Do you think then, regarding not going into an experience, because we don't actually know when we're going to go into them unless we practice C5 and we believe that that's possible, or something like that. But do you think that our mindset at the time, because I think you do, because you touched on it, dictates the outcome of the experience?
I think it does, but then again, I see a lot of that with me comes from the psychedelic use, because that's the way it works with psychedelics. But I see so many parallels between psychedelics and between paranormal experiences, like you were saying earlier about the trickster element. It's a very common thing on high psychedelic use to encounter clowns and jesters and things that'll just do daft tricks to make you laugh and stuff like that. So there is a trickster element sort of built into the psychedelic experience, which leads me to believe that whatever people are seeing in a paranormal sense is the same sort of things that they're experiencing in a hallucinatory sense, but not as intense, because it's just something that's happening random off the cuff. It's not something. I don't believe that ghosts are the spirits of dead people.
Okay.
I don't believe that aliens are extraterrestrial visitors. And for the same reason, I don't believe that cryptids are physical creatures either. I think a lot of it is to do with the way that our brains interpret. There's usually on Facebook sometimes you get a lot of these things where it's like an optical illusion, and they say, "Oh, stare at the middle and you'll see everything around the edge sort of move." Do you know what I mean? And it turns out that essentially 99% of what you actually see through your eyes, your brain just makes up. Your eyes don't even see it.
Yeah, we're
You
constructing
only,
what, yeah.
yeah, we are. Your brain's constructing it from data that it's collected in the past. So if we're looking at something and you see a figure walk by the edge of your vision, your peripheral vision, you might choose to interpret that as a dead person or a ghost or something. It could be your brain just fitting in something it doesn't understand.
It's the
I
narrative
aren't
of
saying
what it, yeah.
I aren't saying there's nothing there. What I'm saying is there could be some sort of frequency that your brain's picking up. It's looking at that, but it's got no frame of reference. So what it's doing is it's glomming on the closest thing. You know, we
Yeah.
talked about this with skins and things before, didn't we? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I don't want to sort of repeat what I said in the last video because
Well,
it's just
it,
it's going
you
to
know,
be a bit.
it's I think it's fascinating, but just what do you think ghosts are then? You said I don't believe in ghosts. So if somebody sees the apparition of a deceased person, somebody they actually knew in life, I'm asking the question that might not be gone.
Are you actually seeing the deceased person, or is your brain fixing? You remember telling me about the wedding album?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
The wedding album. Yeah. Is your brain just fixing the image onto something else that's there?
That's
Some other
familiar.
frequency or that's something that's familiar. Did I mention Neil Oliver before? Did I say you're familiar with Neil Oliver, the guy that used to do Coast on BBC Two?
I don't think you did. So just fill us in on. He's a Scottish guy.
He's Scottish guy, long hair. Yeah, he's got a YouTube channel now, and he's
That's where
fascinated.
I've seen him on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, he's fascinated not just in sort of archaeology and history, but he's also fascinated in ghosts and the paranormal. He's written a book on ghosts, and I really should purchase it because the way he was talking about it, he's got some really unusual stories in there, some stuff that's different from the norm. And he tells a story of a young woman buying. I can't remember it exactly now, but she bought a cottage from some woman in Scotland somewhere, and she'd mentioned she'd had some sort of an experience with a ghost in front of the fireplace, banging its head on the mantelpiece of the fireplace, or something to that extent. And it turns out that the woman that sold the cottage lived in that cottage in the 1940s, and she was still alive. And when she mentioned it to the woman that was living in the cottage that sold her it, and she said, "That was me. That happened to me in the 1940s. You saw what happened to me in the 40s. I banged my head on the fireplace." I've simplified it. If you go onto Neil Oliver's channel and you do a bit of a search, a bit of a dig, you'll probably find the story. If I can come up with that, I'll send you a link.
And do you think then that, Paul, is some kind of deep, not necessarily painful, it could be euphoric, but some deep visceral memory that's imprinted in that, or experience that's imprinted in that area? Why would the lady who's still alive?
Yeah, but she was still alive. That's the thing. Yeah. Somebody's seen the ghost of her, but she's still alive.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So is she imprinted the essence of this experience, not necessarily because she's dead, she's alive, into this?
Could be
the fabric of this building.
It could be something to do with the stone, like we talked about last time, the stone tape theory. And quartz crystals, we use quartz crystals to hold vast amounts of information. So there is a possibility that that's actually something that's happening. But if you look through, like I said to you before, I'm interested. All paranormal stuff is anomalous, but I'm interested in the really anomalous stuff, the stuff that doesn't really follow the pattern. And you find a lot of very, very bizarre stories within the paranormal that just don't seem to fit the stereotype. And I think looking at these things are going to be what gives us the answer, or gets us closer to the answer.
So we've just touched on this lady who banged her head or on the fireplace. Any more examples of that?
Not off the top of my head. Do you know what? I've listened to so many. So many.
Let's jump away from that then, and I don't know what your knowledge is on this, because as people in chat, we've got 200 people here. We've not planned any of these questions, so I just want to ask Paul, what are your views on the drones that were seen, basically many parts of the world earlier in the year? And do you think they were man-made? Do you think there was something else?
Good question. The military is experimenting a lot with drones now, and there's bound to be a lot of drones in the air that the like of which we haven't seen, with stuff we've not seen before, because the military are always 10 to 20 years in front with their technology. So there is a very real possibility that it could be military exercises, but what we're seeing don't look like conventional drones because they're a technology that's 20 years in front of what we're used to. So there is that possibility. I also wonder whether it might just be another facet of that UFO experience moving to the next phase. Because, like you said, we've gone from the fear in the Middle Ages to airships in the Victorian period. I don't know if you've heard about the airship stuff over America in the 1800s. And then we moved on to the Venusian flying saucer discs, didn't we, in the 50s with Jordan Damsky. And it's worked its way on through the black triangles to the spheres to the Tic Tacs. It could be just a new face of the same thing, but masking itself, if that's the right term, with modern technology.
Yeah, and masking itself with the way that we're shaping the narrative, because it could be the same. Well, it probably is the same thing all the way through. It's ancient, isn't it? So we had Steve Bassett on, the guy who's pushing for disclosure.
If you think about it now, if you see, Karen, sorry.
No. Well, I'm just saying we had Steve Bassett on, and Steve said that he believed some of these drones were there. The actual military drones or high-tech civilian drones were put in place to mask actual spheres of light and things that shouldn't have been there. That was his take on it. And there's a lot. I noticed after Steve Bassett started talking about that and using that language, that a lot of people are saying the same thing. I'm not necessarily subscribing to that, but that's what he was saying. And it seems like there's a lot of the Americans are following suit now.
I mean, I suppose if you've got a UFO flap in an area and you've got the technology to be able to investigate it, then why wouldn't you investigate it? So I could see the military putting up their own surveillance drones to find out what it is, and then telling the public that a counter narrative to the story. I could see that. I could understand that, but then I have to ask, well, where are all the drones at Bempton that are camouflaging the spheres that you've seen? Do you know what I mean? I don't think we'll ever get an answer to this. I think the answer comes in terms that we cannot, not that we're not ready to, but we cannot understand, because I think that this phenomenon is playing in 5 or 6 dimensions and we're struggling to deal with 4.
Yeah.
So
I hate them glasses. I've just got them and they're rubbish. Sorry. No, I'm struggling with them.
You're all right.
Go on. Yes. 4 dimensions, we're struggling to deal with it, and I cut you off talking about my glasses, so there we go.
Sorry, mate. Yeah, you're all right. I think we're struggling to deal with it because our brains can't comprehend the enormity of what's actually happening. And I think if you could see a bigger picture on a wider scale, you'd probably go, oh yeah, that's that. But because we're sort of reduced in our capability to understand, I don't think we can understand exactly what it is that's happening. It could be something completely normal on a 5th or 6th dimensional level, but to us, we can't grasp it because it doesn't make no sense to us. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. So let's jump from that and something that I think I know you might want to touch on or talk about, and that's AI. Yeah, and I did a short recently, AI versus AR, actual reality. So we can get to that partially, probably. But what are your views on AI? Is it good for mankind, or is it going to sort of, I don't know, push us in the wrong direction?
See, we had this discussion last time, didn't we? But things have moved so quickly with AI that we probably have a completely different discussion this evening.
Yeah.
And I saw a video on YouTube a couple of nights ago where it's talking about the fact that they're now producing fully autonomous robots that can do the work of a man, and they're looking at putting them into factories before the end of the year. So that's come on in leaps and bounds. I mean, if that's true, you never know online what's true and what's not, do you? You've just got to take their word for it when you see stuff. I don't like the idea of AI, primarily because it's like nuclear weaponry. In the right hands, it can do good. In the wrong hands, it can do incredibly bad things. And I think the problem is they've let it loose on the internet, and there's no stopping it getting into the wrong hands now. I think we're really going to struggle with it. I think it's going to be something that's going to cause us serious problems.
Yeah.
And to that end, I was actually thinking, have you ever heard of so people that look at whether there's life on other planets, cosmologists and stuff like that, they have a theory that they call the Great Filter. Have you ever heard of the Great Filter?
No, fill us in on it, please.
No. Okay. So essentially, there a guy called, I can't remember what his first name was, but he was called Drake. Somebody Drake created a famous equation called the Drake equation.
The Drake equation, yeah.
The Drake equation. So it was a formula to determine how many possible planets there could be in the galaxy with civilizations. And the end number, even putting in sort of minimal numbers to begin with, the end number is so great that there's a practical impossibility that we would not be surrounded by other civilizations. But one of the things that's proposed by a lot of the people that look into the Drake equation is that something called the Great Filter could wipe out the majority of people, majority of civilizations. Now, I do wonder whether that Great Filter might actually be AI, whether we've created something that is now civilizationally dangerous.
Sort of
and
limiting a life expectancy of a planet.
Life expectancy of the civilization. Now, this ties in back a little bit into what you talked about earlier with Trojan horses and technology. I've often thought that the Roswell crash was a gift from a civilization that wanted us to develop computers. Now, who's to say that civilization wasn't even a physical civilization? It could be an AI civilization that wiped
bring
out
us to the point we're at today.
Yeah, to spread itself, but wipe out physical life as well. This could be the reason we don't see these civilizations, because anything that's AI on an advanced enough level would probably be invisible to any of our senses. They don't produce radio signal. They don't. They won't need to produce light or heat because they can see in the dark. They can. Do you know what I mean? Any AI, if AI can produce AI and become self-aware, and it's like an exponential thing as it goes through the iterations of its own programming, it's going to come up with faster than light travel in a matter of years, if not months, as it programs itself. So I think AI could be the Great Filter that wipes out all these civilizations, and this is a possibility that we might have just done it to ourselves now with AI, probably, or possibly even pushed on by the gift of transistors and silicon chips from another world.
Yeah, it's fascinating and terrifying. And like when you said right at the beginning when we touched on AI that you don't know whether there's any truth in it at this moment, but the autonomous robots that are going to replace man, they are in parts, aren't they? They're not looking like a robotic version of man, but we've got them building cars and components and in factories and things. But it's a frightening world, isn't it, when you think about your children and your children's children, because they're going to grow up with nothing to do. So what was that going to look? And we're producing people all of the time. So what's that going to do? We're going to be a population that's dependent on something, almost like a slave race, because we're not going to be able to work and produce things ourselves and get a wage at the end of it. So where's the end result? Because who's going to amass all of this wealth? And the population's just going to be stagnant. It'll probably call for a depopulation, as horrible as that sounds.
I can't understand that. The thing is, the only thing that really sort of drives the economy is people's labour, because you work, you give your time, and you exchange your time for money, which you exchange for goods. Now, if you're going to produce millions of robots to take jobs away from people, physical jobs, then that's all right. They're producing stuff, but who's going to buy the stuff they're producing? Because if you've not got any money, who's going to buy the products these companies are producing? So they're going to have to give you some money to be able to purchase. Do you know what I mean? It don't make no sense. Yeah. It's like you're wiping out the labour force, but the labour force they're your consumers.
You will become slaves, won't they, to the machine? And it's just cliche as it sounds.
I kind of get that, but what would we do? What would we do? What do the machines need us to do that they can't do more efficiently and quickly and with less less
Yeah,
complication.
but there's got to be an end game for the people, the higher echelons of power that are leading us down this path, or have unless they're all they can think about is the monetary gain at this present time, because eventually it will peak, won't it? And it'll get like you've just said, where people don't have to work. They just won't. There won't be work for them because machines will be doing that work. But surely they can't do everything. You know, when you get into the real, when you get into the forests, when you get into the actual the earth and working with the land, can machines do that? We know they can plough fields, but there must be some things that they couldn't do. And I apologise, people. This isn't exactly unexplained phenomena, but I hope you've got some questions for this.
I think if you actually go onto YouTube and you find Boston Dynamics video channel, YouTube channel, and just have a look at how far they've come on with these robots. They've got these robots doing parkour and backflips, and they're man-shaped robots. They can do everything a man can. They've got robots that are doing martial arts with other people. So it's just a matter of time before they produce these things. And they're talking about on scale. On scale, they can produce them for peanuts. Once you start scaling them out, they produce them. The problem is a lot of it comes down to short-termism, really. It's like in the early 2000s when all these businesses started buying stuff from China because it was cheaper. It's like it gives you an edge over the competition because you're getting your products in cheaper, which means you can sell more and you can get a little bit above the competition. But at some point, when everyone's buying from China, you're all in the same level playing field. And it's the same with robots. When they start hiring robots to do jobs, the first person that does it is going to make a mint because it's like they're ahead of the game and you're saving money on where. But eventually, when everybody is hiring robots and not people, no one's making any money because there's no money to go around. You're making stuff for people who aren't going to be able to afford to buy it. We're not going to be able to consume it. So therefore, your robot workforce is useless. You've got to put humans in at one end and get money out at the other in order to keep the cycle going round. Otherwise, it just stalls. You know what I mean?
Let's jump back to the unexplained then, yeah? And we'll jump to Les if he's any questions. If he hasn't, we'll carry on. Just put thumbs up or down, Les.
Well, we'll just do a little bit of advertising here, Paul. Yeah, I've got some books to sell, I think.
Yeah, the Truth Proof books, the paperback copies of the books, as we do every week. Truthproof.uk. If you're buying them overseas, use the Amazon link, then we can go through global shipping. The Kindle versions are on, obviously, Amazon Kindle. That you can download them there. And if you want the Wolflands DVD, that's on Amazon Prime, or it's available truthproof.uk, same as the eBay link if you want it for overseas. If I got an order in tonight for this, it'd be in post tomorrow morning, unless it's weekend. That's how it works. They're always out. And my Amazon site for the books says that. You have a look. It's pretty impeccable as regards getting deliveries out. So that's where we are with the books and the DVDs. So thank you, Les.
I just want to pick up on a couple of, one thing that you mentioned there, Paul, is you talked about the economy, and if robots were, involved in production, then how do we get paid, etc., etc. Well, I think the economy worldwide now has kind of changed a lot because data is the biggest selling factor between governments, countries. Your data is sold time and time and time and time again. This is now the new economy. Are you with me? Carbon credits, where we offset carbon credits to poorer countries and they go and make all like crap and then we ship it all back here. It's all in the economy now. So the economy changed from 50 years ago, how we saw it, where you mentioned in your thing there is that we do the graft and then we get a wage packet at the end of the day. I think it's all changed.
But it's not sustainable, is it? Because it's basically like fiat currency. You can print as much money as you want, but if it's not backed by anything other than thin air, it's not worth anything. So it's all right selling data, but you're selling data on people who are consumers. So most of the data they sell you is your shopping habits and sort of your location and stuff like that. But if you're not shopping because you've got no money, then what's your data worth?
Yeah, but it's not just consumers, is it? It's people can be on social media, but not consuming magnificent loads. And there could be, as you say, lots of people consuming and using social media. But it's not just social media. It's the delving into bank accounts now. They're delving into everything. Every little bit of data you've got attached to yourself is all a saleable commodity.
This is true. I get that. But the point is, if you're not working and you don't have any money, you've not got anything in your bank account to hack. And most of the data that they're selling is your shopping habits, and it's they're trying to advertise direct to people. Now, if you've not got a job because a robot's took your job and you've no money, who are they going to sell it to? Do you know what I mean? You have to have somebody at the beginning of the cycle working and producing a product and getting paid for it to have money at the end of the line for that person to be able to afford to buy the product he's making. This is my argument with a lot of the automated tills in places like Asda and Morrison's. They get all the automated tills in, and it's fine when one supermarket does it. It's look how good we are. But when every single supermarket in the country does it, and they lay off 100,000 staff, well, those 100,000 staff aren't going shopping in Morrison's or Asda because they've got no money. Do you know what I mean? And you replicate that across the board when it's not just tills. Your AI is taking solicitors' jobs and anyone sort of in a call centre, anyone who works on a computer, artists, designers, musicians, even. You know, even creative types. They said that it was going to do the drudgery jobs and leave us to be creative. Well, the first section of society they've gone after are the creative arts, music and art and film and stuff like that. You're producing AI stuff now. So there's going to be nothing. There's going to be no money, no jobs for anyone to actually earn any money to spend on anything that all these robots are going to produce. So it's a dead end. When they own everything. When these companies, when eventually one company in the world owns everything and owns all the means of production and everything, it'll be worth nothing because there'll be nobody with any money to buy any of the products. It has to keep going. It's the same way. You have to have poor people for there to be rich people, because everybody had the same amount of money. You'd have no poor and you'd have no rich, but no one would have a standard lifestyle because incentive keeps money flowing uphill. It keeps the cycle going round. Aspirations of poor people to go out and earn more money keeps the money flowing, which makes rich people. If everybody is at the same level, this is why I don't really agree with basic a minimum basic income, what do they call it, basic income something or other, because if you give everybody £1,200 a month, that becomes the new zero. Because if you want someone to work for you, you're going to have to pay them more money because they're already getting £1,200 a month. You're going to have to double their wages to get them to come into work for the incentive, which means you've got to double the price of the products, which means you have £1,200 a month. It disappears because everything's twice as expensive. I don't think they've thought about it. It just don't work.
You obviously have, Paul.
Anyway, back to the unexplained.
We'll keep on track.
We're getting into politics now.
That's probably a show for another day. But interesting all the same, and you make some really good points.
Seriously, I hope people in chat thought it was interesting. I did. I'm sorry we can't always talk about UFOs, and Paul just brought a new bit of info to the table. We've got some questions, right?
Yeah, Steve 071. Do you think the phenomena has a reason for using the silence? I know you didn't have the silence in your in the forest there, but do they use the silence during some encounters? Do you think?
Say that again. Sorry, I completely missed the question.
Do you think the phenomena has a reason for using the silence during some encounters?
I think it's a symptom rather than an effect. I think it's indicative that you've moved into a different phase, that something's happening, that's put you in a different space, in a different type of dimension. I don't think it's anything that the phenomena produces as a kind of what would you call it? It's not got a reason for using it. It's a side effect as such. It's like again, I mean, I'm gonna go back to hallucinogenics again because it's a lot of this ties in. There's a lot of similarity between it. On some hallucinogenics, when you actually enter that space, you'll hear a loud pop or an explosion. There'll be a sound effect, or sound will change, or your ears will pop, or there'll be like a ringing in your ears. And I do wonder if maybe the silence is something to do with a change in phase within your brain, or a change in something to do with the frequency of the dimension you're in, or the atmosphere, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Just before you go to the question, Les, I can kind of relate to that and simplify it for me anyway. When we were making Wolflands, we went up to Scalby Mills, place you'll be familiar with, Paul, and we were up on top there talking to Gaz, who'd had this weird experience where everything went silent. And, and he felt this intense fear as though something were approaching. But he said the sound of the sea, he couldn't hear it. It just stopped. He couldn't hear the sea. Now, no matter how powerful the phenomena is, it can't stop the sound of the ocean, I wouldn't think. So that it kind of rings true when you're saying it's something that's been projected. He did feel it, he did experience it, but it's internally, whatever's happening, whether it's something external that's creating this. Well, it's got to be, hasn't it? But it's not the fact that the environment's changed. It's something that's affected the individual, I think, and it made them perceive that everything's just gone totally silent.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and that'd be kind of totally opposite, wouldn't it? To where you get like an animal, a predator animal, say like a mountain lion, and everything obviously goes to ground, and so you'd probably eat nothing. All the animals talking about it. Probably not so much the birds, but yeah. So yeah,
absolutely.
Let's have a look then. We've got Rod. Do we know any cases where someone has confronted the phenomenon?
Well, it's a difficult one for me, Rod, and we'll let Paul have a think about that one. But just he touched on Broxer fellas earlier. Them three guys in Broxer Forest. They didn't exactly confront it, but they had no choice but to stay with it. And the experience were terrifying. I don't know. When you go to confront it, it's like Paul, Ray, and other lads that went in there with him. They've been in many times since. And I wouldn't say you've gone in there to confront it, but you've been aware of it. And it's just disregarded you, or if it's been there, it's not made its presence known. So I'm not sure I get it, Rod, and I'm probably backing up the wrong tree. I love Little Thumbnail, by the way. Every time I see it, I say it. I like that swan. But I don't know. What's your views, Paul?
I always come back to. I remember hearing a case of a dog man. Somebody encountered a dog man, and the thing chased him, and he tripped and fell, and he sort of landed on his face. And they turned over to look at this thing, and when it got to him, it just stood and looked at him like it didn't know what to do. And then it turned and ran away because it kind of there was no further response. I don't think from that. I've got something I'd like to mention regarding cryptids a little bit later on, and it made me smile when he said about confronting it, because some of this is to do with confronting it. It's a little bit left field, but it's something I found in a book that I bought a lot of years ago, and I've only read it again recently, and you might find it interesting.
Absolutely. Well, we'll get through these questions, and that's what we'll move straight on to. And I see Laura, my daughter's in. Hi, Laura. Thank you.
Honolushi, have you had other experiences when you were scared?
The only one I can remember where I actually felt a little bit of trepidation was when I had an episode of sleep paralysis. In this house, I've been in this house 20 something years now, and I think I've only been in it a couple of years when it happened, and I could actually feel. I woke up and I was paralyzed as you do with sleep paralysis, and I opened my eyes and I could see, and I could feel and simultaneously feel and see something coming down the landing towards me. When I say I see it, I could see the shadow blocking out the light, and I could feel a pressure. And it sort of it didn't really frighten me, but I was a bit sort of nervous as to what it was. But then when I kind of got my bearings and I realised, oh, this is sleep paralysis, I kind of got a little bit excited, stupidly, because I've been reading about these things for years, and it was like, finally, I'm going to get to see what actually happens. Because my brother had sleep paralysis for most of his life, and he used to get a guy in a hooded robe sit on his chest with no face and literally try and squeeze the air out of his lungs. And my stepdad suffered with sleep paralysis as well, but he never used to see entities. He just used to be paralysed and couldn't all he could move was his little finger. So I remember this happening and getting quite excited about it. And because I was excited, it just dissipated, it went away, and I just woke up. And I always felt a little bit cheated that I didn't get to experience what it was, because I wanted to see it for myself. And so that's the only time I've ever really been, I won't even say frightened, I'd say nervous. I'd say nervous and a little bit sort of, I don't know, excited, but nervous excited.
But did you
Because
feel,
I kind of
did
understood what was happening. Do you know what I mean? And it was like,
Yeah.
what am I going to see?
did you feel in control of it, and then probably that evaporated any fear? Or did you feel that you was in control?
I don't think I felt that I was in control, but I think the fact that I was quite excited to see what was going to happen probably made it think, you know what, it's not worth it. Because they obviously want to elicit some sort of fear. It wants to elicit some sort of fear from you. And I think if you don't show that fear, it loses interest.
Well,
So-
yeah, you was onto him, weren't you? You
know
was
what I mean?
onto the entity, yeah.
So we call it sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
It's almost like we've given it a medical term then. So do you actually think there's some kind of entity, some kind of external force, and it's not just some kind of episode that we're having?
I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know because I do have regular episodes of sleep paralysis now, but without any visions or anything. I wake up and I can't move.
Right.
So it's almost like whatever that episode is in your body, does it trigger something else in your brain to just go off at a tangent, and that's what causes the entity and everything else that happens in between it. But once you've kind of got your head around the fact that it's not an actual entity, does your brain think, oh well, it's just a normal thing that happens sometimes, so I don't have to get all let up and sort of anxious about it? Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
I do. It makes sense, but I don't kind of buy into your brain causes this entity for the simple reason that in sleep paralysis, I'm not saying in every case, but in, I would say 90% or 99% of cases, the entity that's described is very similar. So why is everybody describing this old hag? Or, you get that. I know you've just said something different, but a lot of the people are describing something very similar, and people that probably got no knowledge of it. Not everybody's
They do.
You know, I don't know.
Okay, last question for this session. And Studio 211 Productions. How far away were these shadows from you, and were there any detectable odors?
No detectable odors. I mean, you're in a forest, so all you can smell really is just decaying matter and pine trees. Anyway, it's quite overpowering. Far away, I mean, they were probably in a circle about 100 feet around us, at various different sort of trees and different locations. Ray said he saw one at quite a distance away that walked between the two trees, and he said he saw it physically walk on two legs between the two trees. But I think most of them I would probably say within about 100 feet. They never really got any closer than that. It's not like it was literally there. There's a tree there and it was there. It was all in the sort of middle distance. So yeah, probably about 100 feet.
Okay, I'll be back later, guys.
Yeah. And just before we get to that, good to spend some time with Studio yesterday. Me and Linny did, and he did a bit of filming with us, which were good. We sort of contributed to what Studio wanted to do. Andy, calling him Studio, aren't I? So it was good to meet up yesterday, you and Louise. So you were going to talk about these theories or thoughts you've formed on the cryptid scenario. You said I've got some new, I don't know this new stuff, but you've got some things you want to talk about.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be something that no one's really heard of before because it's from a really old book. So I mentioned to you when I was a teenager, I got interested in like a lot of paranormal occult things and sort of alternative religions, mysticism, shamanism, stuff like that. And I found a book by a guy called Carlos Castaneda, who was a very, very famous anthropologist from America. And this book was produced. It was pretty big in the 60s and the 70s when everybody was into the sort of flower power and their LSD and stuff like that. It became a bit of an icon to a lot of, especially sort of San Francisco hippies and things like that, people into the scene. And he was an anthropologist student at the University of California in San Francisco. He was a Chilean by birth, and he moved to America to study. And one of his interests was the uses of medicinal plants by the Native Americans. And to this end, he set out to find a contact in New Mexico who knew about medicinal plants used by the natives. In specific, a cactus called peyote, which is a hallucinogenic cactus used by the Native American Indians. And he met up with somebody through a friend. He met up with a guy who was what was called a brujo, a local brujo, which was like a kind of a sorcerer, shaman, medicine man kind of area, called Don Juan Matus. If anybody wants to sort of look this up, all the audio books are on YouTube. All literally, you can download all the audio books for free, or Kindle books. The books are like 50 years old now, so they're pretty freely available. They're a long read. There's some very interesting stuff in them. They're a long read. So essentially, what happened was he met this chap, and this chap, he wanted to learn about peyote. So this chap had said to him, "Come to my house, meet me at my house, and I'll teach you." And what sort of occurred over the next 10 years was a weird sort of apprenticeship into shamanism, where he took him out and showed him incredible things, feats that were just, it was impossible for his mind to grasp. They're a really interesting set of books to read because they're quite fascinating. He's since been kind of debunked by people in the arena that say, well, a lot of what he said's not true. A lot of what he said he got from other people and stuff like that. But when you read the books, there's a lot of the ways that he describes things. It comes across as if it's true to me. It's as if he's actually had these experiences. And I have a feeling that some of it may have been genuine experience, and then some of it, because of the popularity of the books, will have been stuff that he's maybe fabricated or added to. But he talks about a lot of different concepts within these books, taking hallucinogenic plants, going out into sacred areas of the desert and doing sort of teleportation stuff and all sorts of things. But one of the things that I found really intriguing was that he talks about this sorcerer and this sorcerer's friend having something called allies. So these allies are an entity that roams the land that sorcerers can call, and they can literally trap. They can trap and force them to do their bidding. And he said that what actually happens is, at some point, if you spend enough time outside, you'll come across one of these things. And the way to actually make it your slave is to pin it to the ground. You grab it and you pin it to the ground. And after a while of wrestling with this thing, it will give up and subdue, and then you can literally keep it as your sort of servant sort of thing. And so I'm going to just read you a passage out of one of the books. There's a lot of information about these things that are studied throughout. I think he's got about 18 books that's studied throughout all the books. But one of the passages that I found that maybe sort of sums up what these things look like or what these things do is probably this. This is the best one. So he goes, I had been confronted in the past with some inexplicable phenomena which Don Juan and Don Genaro had called their allies. There were 4 of them, and they were entities as real as anything in the world. Their presence was so outlandish that it would create an unparalleled state of fear in me every time I perceived them. The first one I had encountered was Don Juan's. It was a dark rectangular mass, 8 or 9 feet high and 4 or 5 feet across. It moved with the crushing weight of a giant boulder and breathed so heavily that it reminded me of the sound of bellows. I had always encountered it at night in the darkness. I had fancied it to be like a door that walked by pivoting on one corner and then on the other. The second ally I came across was Don Genaro's. It was a long-faced, bald-headed, extraordinarily tall, glowing man with thick lips and enormous droopy eyes. He always wore pants that were too short for his long, skinny legs. I had seen those 2 allies a great many times while in the company of Don Juan and Don Genaro. The sight of them would invariably cause an irreconcilable separation between my reason and my perception. On the one hand, I had no rational ground whatsoever to believe that what was happening to me was actually taking place, and on the other hand, there was no possible way of discarding the truthfulness of my perception. Since they had always appeared while Don Juan and Don Genaro were around, I had filed them away as products of the powerful influence that those 2 men had had on my suggestible personality. In my understanding, it was either that or that Don Juan and Don Genaro had in their possession forces they actually called allies, forces which were capable of manifesting themselves to me as those horrendous entities. A feature of the Allies was that they never allowed me to scrutinise them thoroughly. I tried various times to focus my undivided attention on them, but every time I would get dizzy and disassociated. The other two Allies were more elusive. I had seen them only once. A gigantic black jaguar with yellow glowing eyes and a ravenous, enormous coyote. The two beasts were ultimately aggressive and overpowering. The jaguar was Don Genaro's and the coyote was Don Juan's.
Right. That's
Sound
fascinating,
familiar?
isn't it? Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure people are going to want to read these books or look up this information. And do you know whether he were under? I'm not saying he was under the influence of the cactus hallucinogenic when he was perceiving these.
Not most of the time, no. Most of the time, no. He did sometimes, and some of the actual experiences he had while he was on the cactus and various other hallucinogens are really interesting to read, because there's other things in there that sort of trigger other what do you call it, similar things that I've heard from other people. But there's literally references to these things dotted throughout all the books of different things they did. But when I read that back passage, I got sort of hairs on the back of my neck stood up, because the gigantic black door that made a crushing sound reminded me of the thing that went for the guy on Scalby Mills Cliff. You know, he said he heard a massive noise like a bull was charging him.
Yeah,
and when
absolutely.
he turned around, there was nothing there. He said it made so much noise. And then the guys in Warncliffe Woods, this thing was thrashing around, smashing
There's nothing.
trees. And in the morning, there was nothing there. It was like it just
Do-
made the noise. And then we've got the long, tall, skinny man that looks like the Rake. We've got the black jaguar with glowing eyes. I mean, the glowing eyes, but a black cat, and then an enormous coyote, which could be a wolf.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? But one of the things I'm thinking around all this was because of where these guys were in New Mexico is very close to that sort of area where they talk about skinwalkers.
Right.
Now, I wonder whether the skinwalkers are not actually able to change into these creatures, but that these creatures are available to do the bidding for the skinwalkers, but they kind of obfuscate the reason of what they are and why they're there. But they actually are able to subdue these things and possess them and force them to do things for them. But they they don't let everybody know, because it adds to the fear if they say they can change into these things, whereas they necessarily can't. I mean, I know we're explaining one unexplained phenomena with another unexplained phenomena, and it's not actually an answer. But it stood out to me enough that I thought I had to mention it, because it's not necessarily an explanation, is it? But it shows that back then in the 1960s, when these books were written, the only cryptid anybody had ever heard of was Sasquatch.
Yeah.
Nobody had heard of any of the other cryptids. But
Nobody was really going into the detail, were they? No.
No. I mean, a few of the other things he says about these things. He says, in the company of men, they behave like men. In the company of animals, they behave like animals. Animals are usually afraid of them. However, if they are accustomed to seeing the allies, they leave them alone. We ourselves do something similar. We have scores of allies among us, but we don't bother them, since our eyes can only look at things. We don't notice them.
So you know, if there's a truth in what this man's seen and experienced, there's an enormous intelligence there for these things to behave animalistic, almost feral, and then become almost human-like with behaviour. It's strange, and there's the mimicry as well. I mean, you touched on Warncliffe Wood, so you remember that one, and the guy went in with his, I don't know whether 4 of them or 3 of them, and they made that camp, and all night long after this thing had showed its presence, and there were more than one, they believed they were, just like you guys in Wycombe, either it were extremely fast or there were more than one, because you were seeing it flitting round, or this shadow. But trees he said they were exploding. He said it just sounded like trees were just being split in half. And then the next day, a daylight arrives, and excuse me, the woodland. I'm not going to say forest. The woodland's still intact. It's still. I spoke to Ron Moorhead not about this, what I'm on about now, but about the mimicry, and the potential that. I mean, you're taking it to another level. I'm talking about the actual Sasquatch, the actual creature being not necessarily a physical thing when it's here, but the sounds that it's making are almost mimicry, the owl noises, and we're going to get to that, the knocks and all the other things. They're not necessarily knocking on trees. It could be voice projection, and we've jumped away from your passages there a little bit, but what are your opinions on the sounds that people are hearing? Tree knocks, owl noises, different animals, and they know that it's not these things. Too much of a concentration of owl hooting in a certain area, and if you're experienced, you know that that's not going to happen unless someone's just fledged the nest and you've got an old group of them. Are these things mimicking other animals?
Well, interestingly enough, he does actually say in one of the passages in one of the other books that they were out one night and one of his allies was stalking the area and it was mimicking an owl.
Right. Okay.
Because it's a long passage to go into, but essentially he says this is what they do. They go out there and when they're stalking around, they mimic other animals. And he says you need to be keenly aware of what you're listening to, because some animals, you can tell they're animals, they have a peculiar tone. But he says you'll sometimes hear a noise that for some reason will just make you freeze and the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, and you know instinctively that it's not an animal you're listening to. There's a lot of different passages in these books that refer to these things. There's a lot. It's 10 years worth of notes. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, it's interesting.
Sort of difficult to
be searching them out. I think only last week I spoke. A lady contacted me who'd had an experience in Danes Dyke whilst with a friend. They'd gone for a walk around, not looking for some kind of weird experience. And when they got to the car park in dark, they put lights on and they saw a wolf. So they say. Extremely long, too long to be a wolf. But what the fascinating part that I found about a story, and it's an experience, it's not a story. It's kind of plays it down when you say a story. But she said it turned. It never suggested anything in her mind, but she just thought it would just looked at me and you wanted to see something. Now you are doing, and its eyes were glowing, but not self-illuminating. They're in headlights, but it just moved. It moved into tree line, and a friend said she didn't, that even though it had gone into the tree line, and you know that car park, when you park in front and look into trees, you've been to Danes Dyke, haven't you? And she says it was splat banging opening at trees when we put headlights on. And it's kind of fascinating, and we jump into coincidence now, but as we're walking around talking, a van pulls up and a guy says, "Is it Paul?" "Yeah, I've got a story to tell you." And he comes out with his story, and we met up with him next day. This lady accompanied me and my wife. Do you know what I mean? And we met him next day, and he's telling this incredible story. And it's almost like, I don't know. What do you think to coincidence? Do you think things are meant to be? Because I just think to myself, the chances of me being there talking about some kind of weird cryptid or strange animal encounter, and then on the same day during that experience, somebody else comes with one, and it doesn't happen all the time. It's not like, I do meet people who've got things to share. They were even from the same location years before, but didn't know each other. It were weird.
Well, I don't know what you used to do for a living, but have you ever heard of Carl Jung?
Yeah.
Carl Jung, I think he was a psychoanalyst or something like that. Was he a psychologist or something? He actually coined the phrase synchronicity.
Okay.
To deal with coincidences, because he had an idea that they weren't just coincidences, that these things happen for a reason, and synchronous things happen almost as waymarkers in life and as hints that you were on the right track and things like that. And he actually wrote quite a lot about synchronicities. I think he did a full book on synchronicity. I mean, he was 1920, something like that. So it's a good few years back. But yeah, in the sort of a consciousness field, they call it synchronicity. And it's very, 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 very common.
And does that mean then, if we throw it net even wider, that our lives are planned out and mapped out? And if so, by what? Or do you think we're making his own future and his own destiny?
Again, that's another difficult one, because I've heard so many different theories on the subject. But have you read of anything by Anthony Peake?
No, I haven't. No.
He would be a good chap. If you could get him to come on the show, he'd be a good chap to listen to.
We message odd times, and I've thought about getting him on. We actually do. Yeah. In fact, he's just written another book. Yeah. But frequent listeners to Truth Proof will know I read zilch. I've not even read my own books. I've not even read through them ever. Do you know what I mean? I swear to you, I haven't. And so that's,
But this is a good thing about YouTube on podcasts, Paul, because you can just select a podcast, and while you're doing the garden, or you're washing the pots, or you're going for a drive anywhere, you can just listen. And he's got so many YouTube vids and podcasts out there. He essentially says what happens is our life is like a computer game where you on this planet are the player, the character, and the player is in another dimension controlling aspects, but you have a certain level of free will, but your actual he calls them the daemon and the eidolon. So the daemon is like the oversoul, and the eidolon is the character on Earth, the three-dimensional character. And he says essentially you have a certain level of free will to go through your life, but the daemon, the oversoul, can kind of give you ideas and clues, but not directly. So sometimes it can give you a feeling that something's not the right way to go, or you'll get a synchronicity that will lead you to a certain place. And he's wrote a lot of books and done a lot of sort of lectures and stuff on the fact that we die and we live the same life again, but it changes because we have more information, and everybody else has more information as well. So when you die, you come back and you live the same life, a little bit like Groundhog Day. It's some really interesting ideas.
Yeah, but like I said, I haven't read his work, but it's strange because he was talking today about a eureka moment and been given a selection of books as a child that put him on the path. You know, Anthony Peake, that's what he was talking about today. I was reading it, but not reading his book. I was reading what he was, the comments he were talking about. So yeah, let's make a note of that. We shall we'll see if we can get him on live on the Truth Proof live stream. I'm sure we can. So
if you listen, sorry, Paul. I say if you listen to any of him talking about his experiences when he was younger and how he got into reading, got into writing books, there's quite a lot of synchronicities that took him in that direction. And he says he always notices when synchronicities appear because he'll make a note of them. He'll put them up on Facebook when things have happened, so you can kind of track it with him. You know what I mean? So it's interesting.
Okay, then let's jump far away from shadow beings and UFOs. And what you've spent loads of time in forests, woodland, wild camping. What are your views on the big cats?
Oh, they're definitely real. And I think they are actually physical creatures.
Oh, I think so. Yes. But have you seen one? Besides in a zoo?
I haven't seen one, but interestingly enough, the group of four of us that went camping that witnessed the shadow beings, Gary lived in Killam, used to live in Killam, and he's seen one. And Mark was working, I think it was only last year when he messaged me. I think I messaged you when it happened. He was working up at Scarborough and on his way back through Scalby, he saw one cross the road, a black one. And one of the other lads in the group, Mark, who does a lot of solo camping, was up at Driffield, and he didn't see one, but he heard one in the woods where he was camping because he'd heard it sort of growling. And he said the dog that was padding around and growling. He said the dog that was with him was absolutely terrified. He said it climbed inside his sleeping bag and hid at the bottom shaking. He says, I've never seen it do that with anything. And he said he could hear it sort of, like that sort of low growl to make.
Yeah. It's a
so
bit,
out of a group of about 8 or 10 of us, three people have witnessed it. So
yeah, it'd be brilliant to have had a thermal camera that night. He'd have probably picked it up, wouldn't he? He'd have seen it. And all those locations that you've mentioned, Scalby, Driffield, Killam, are all places, mainly in Truth Proof 2 and 1, where I've had the big cat reports. And Burton Agnes, we've had them from there as well. But not just recently, decade after decade after decade, but they're not just the black ones, beige ones as well. Yeah, it's fascinating. And as I say, I'm one thing that I don't mean that they're all paranormal. I don't think I'm on the same page as you. I think that they're actually a living physical thing that's existing, and they're just very elusive. But it always puzzles me that we've got a little lane in Bridlington called Short Lane. It's a mile long. You may have driven on it. From Bridlington, it takes you onto road towards Bempton, and it's flat. There's nothing. Bit of Hawthorne Edge at one side, and then arable land to other side. Yeah, we got lots of big cat reports on that lane. I find that strange because there's nowhere really for one to hide. I think grand scheme of things, 2006, 2009, then reports that have come to me when people leading some horses, seen a big cat and actually laid in the grass. And it just thinks, why Short Lane? It's odd. Do you know what I mean? It could be just it's a migratory route.
Yeah, well, this is it. But what you've got to look at as well is they did I can't remember when it was, but I saw something on the internet where they put tracking collars on some cats in the wild, mountain lions or something, and they found that they can actually travel up to 60 miles a day.
It's incredible,
in
isn't it?
search of prey, which was probably something like 2 or 3 times longer than they actually thought. So it could just be that that area with Short Lane is pretty good for pheasants.
Yeah, absolutely.
It might be just an abundant place where they can catch stuff. Same with Scalby and Driffield and Killam. There could be areas there that are just particularly good for
Rich
game.
in food, yeah. And so jump into that before we leave Big Cats. I personally think there's more than enough food to support big cats here. And what's your views?
Yeah, definitely. The amount of rabbits, the amount of pheasants, the deer population's absolutely boomed in the last 20 years. You've got lambs. I mean, I know farmers, lambs go missing. You assume foxes, but I mean, foxes are more scavengers than hunters. They'll take chickens. I don't know about lambs; are probably a bit too big, but lambs go missing on a regular basis. And I don't know. I'm not sure on the numbers. Do you know what the numbers are for a population to have to be able to keep themselves going, breeding wise?
I don't
think it's that many, is it?
No, it isn't. I've been told on good authority that there's 2 breeding pairs and 1 in Irewood Dale, in Forest of North Yorkshire, and that's only what I've been told about by people who would know, and they're quite happy for them to remain there. They don't want them disturbed because they think it's good to bring deer population down.
Yeah.
And in grand scheme of things, looking at the deer population, as you've just said, it's boomed. They're not. I don't even think they're going to touch it.
No.
Absolutely
No,
not.
absolutely not.
So
Absolutely
if you then, and we'll go to some questions because we've got about 15 minutes left. So not yet, Les. But just if you could experience then one thing, paranormal wise, we know we've touched on if you've got all the money in the world, what would you do? What would it be? What would you be looking for, or what would you've got the unlimited amounts of money and you can go in search of something. Don't have to be paranormal, cryptid, strange animal, undiscovered. We've only got 15 minutes, Paul.
I think to be fair, I think it'd be a toss-up between actually having the same sort of experience that Travis Walton had with a craft and an abduction, and coming face to face with a dog man. I think those would probably be joint number 1.
Really?
On my actual list, yeah.
And
because there's nothing like being slapped in the face with it, is there?
Absolutely. Well, you kind of said be careful what you wish for, and you find yourself out in these locations, don't you?
Yeah.
So, do you? And I don't mean you're not brave, because obviously you're talking like this, and I've met you. But do you really think that you'd stand there and not flinch if you saw something like that? I don't mean I'd run into darkness, but I can't help but think I'd be frightened.
I think I would be tempted to find out whether my theory holds ground, whether if I actually keep a calm mind. If I keep a calm mind, would I have a different experience? And I think that would be the temptation. It would be the temptation to stand and sort of face a dog man off and just say, go on then, let's see what you've got. Do you know what I mean? And just see what happens. I mean, it might claw me to death. I might end up food. But
so
I don't know.
We're hearing more about dogmen, although we've heard about the werewolf phenomenon. I think people confuse when I talk about the werewolf phenomenon as though I'm imagining something's transforming, and I'm not. It's just that it's more of a common term in Europe and in the UK than it is in America. But do you think that we're shaping the phenomena as we're talking about it? Do you think it's morphing into what we want it to be, and throw that net wide to UFOs and everything? We've seen the shape of UFOs change over decades.
I think it is. It's not necessarily what we want it to be, but I think it's co-created because I think everybody has a kind of a grasp on stuff. This is the reason why I said earlier we've seen the UFO thing change from sort of airships to black triangles to drones, and I think it's once something like this gets in the news. I mean, look, just look at, for instance, in the 1950s. The Sprace brothers, they were all humans with blonde hair. They were all Nordics. Move on forward to Whitley Strieber's Communion. Now everybody's seeing greys. Yeah. David Icke came on the scene. Everybody's seeing reptilians. Do you know what I mean? I think it's whatever's in the collective consciousness. The collective consciousness is kind of, it's a co-creation between us and other people's consciousness, plus whatever whatever sort of entities or whatever sort of forces are out there. Do you know what I mean?
Or is it all of them, and just the fact that somebody becomes in vogue, and then more people are empowered to talk about their experience and saying, put their hand up and say, "Yeah, this is what I've seen." I don't know.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? Why not? It can be both. Don't have to just be one, does it? I mean, if we're talking fifth and sixth dimension, it could be both, couldn't it? And I don't mean fifth and sixth dimension on a physical plane. I mean fifth and sixth dimension thinking.
Yeah.
It could be both. There's no reason why it has to be one or the other.
I'm going to see if there's any questions now. Is that okay, Paul? We've got 15 minutes left. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, that, Paul, because we've had many a guest on the live stream who they kind of give an authoritative number of how many species of aliens are out there. How they know that, I don't know.
No, it's puzzling, isn't it? But Paul just leaves the door open, and I like that. You know, you're not putting a stamp on anything, are you?
Okay, we've got a question from Joseph O'Donovan. Can everyone experience? ? Investigator Hugh Ross petitioned astronomers that had seen UFOs. In each case, the experiencer had some connection via family or themselves to occult, tarot cards, etc. There was some connection there after they'd had an experience as being an astronomer.
Can everyone experience?
I think again, it comes back to that open mind. I think if you're dead set skeptic and you don't believe the phenomena can happen, then even if you experience something, you're still not going to believe that phenomena can happen. I think the more open-minded you are, the more likely things are to happen to you. I think because it's actually got to do with consciousness. Everybody has a certain level of consciousness, and we all know ourselves that your own mindset can determine how you live your life. We all know that if you're disciplined and you do things happen. If you're determined to go to work, you can earn money and you can buy a house, and your consciousness will kind of give you back what you feed into it. Do you know what I mean? And I think if you're open-minded enough, you will. It's not the experiencing, it's the recognizing the experience. I think that's the key thing. It's a recognizing it for what it is and not filing it away as, oh, well, it was just a dream, or I must have had a dodgy curry, or it can't possibly be so. It must have just been something natural that I don't understand because I've just not done the research. You've got to recognize the experience to understand you've had a paranormal experience as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Martin Greaves, is there any ley lines around the area of where you had your experiences in the woods, Paul?
I'm not necessarily a big fan of the idea of ley lines because a lot of them were just sort of made up, the lines between monuments and stuff. There's no real. I don't really think that there's any evidence as such that they exist, because you see maps of different ley lines and they vary, they change. Having said that, the closest one on a map runs through Rosedale towards Robin Hood's Bay, sorry. So where I was, no, there are no ley lines, but an awful lot of burial mounds.
Yeah.
And quite a few dotted stone circles. Yeah, there is, yeah. The burial mounds. I would have said the burial mounds are more of an indicator than any ley line, because I'm not sure these ley lines are really a thing. I mean, a lot of them run through churches, and if they're supposed to be ancient lines of energy, that some of the alignments are a little bit sketchy to me. I think, I don't know. I mean, I could be proven wrong. I've not done a massive amount of research into them.
Yeah,
from what I've seen, I'm not unconvinced really.
And a lot of the churches aren't as ancient, are they, as the burial mound? Well, they're not. None of the churches are as ancient as the standing stones and the burial mounds. None of them.
No, not at all. No, not at all.
Okay, I've got a good question from John Paul Body. Evening, Paul 1 and Paul 2. What do we think about the possibility that we are experiencing a change in Earth's frequencies, maybe not one seen since all our folklore and myth legends were born. So we're going through this change in the earth, Paul. Nobody's seen it since all probably these folklore myths and legends were born.
Let me just have a read. I'm not quite sure I get that.
What do you think about the possibility that we're all experiencing a change in the Earth's frequencies? Maybe not seen. Maybe the one needed, not seen since all our folklore and myth legends were born.
I think it changes all the time, Paul. I think we're constantly going through changes within the frequencies.
Okay.
And if you've done any sort of looking into astrology and stuff, astrology will tell you that we're constantly, as we travel around, as we orbit, the planet orbits, and as our sun, we orbit the sun, and as our moon orbits us, everything changes constantly. The frequencies are always changing. I think we're always in a state of flux, but I think a lot of that is to do with the fact that because consciousness is liquid, it's not static. Consciousness, it reacts. The energies react to consciousness, and consciousness reacts to the energies around it. I do believe in astrology, actually. I do believe astrology has got something to it. I have a good friend who was an astrologist, and she did my birth chart, and it was uncanny, really uncanny. And I've never really looked into astrology before, and she just came out with it. So I think there's definitely something to it.
Okay.
So I think that there's probably a lot to that, but I don't think it's like a change and then a stop. I think it's dynamic. It's not a static change. It's constant. I think things are constantly changing.
Okay, Steve071 is asking, is this all our subconscious? We really have no idea how strong our deep unknown thoughts really are.
And does it mean, are we manifesting all of this? Maybe.
I would have said if that's the question, if are we manifesting all of this? I think we are. Yes. I think some of it's subconscious. I think some of it's on a conscious level. A lot of it probably happens automatically, like most processes with the human body, like your breathing and your heart rhythm. But we do have some control over that. I think some of it can be done consciously, but I think a lot of it is subconscious. But again, it's an interplay between everyone. It's been an interplay between everyone and an interplay between everything and every energy. I think personally, we talk about it being a simulation, but not a simulation as in someone's created a program, but a simulation that we all take part in, and we're all capable of changing things, and we all sort of play our part to shape the world the way it is and the way things go.
We're shaping our own future, aren't we? Yeah.
I think if more people understood that and knew how to harness it and how to focus it, I think we'd live in a different world. I think that's the thing.
Okay. Tim, 1937. Does Paul know about the vertical plane, the very strange activity at the Doddelson in the 1980s?
No, that's a new one on me. I've not heard of that before.
No. Do you know, Paul?
I don't, and I'm looking at your Hemp for Victory thumbnail. So I know that's not your question, but
no.
Doddelson an RAF base?
Yes, I think so. Maybe.
I'll research that. I think Doddelson was an RAF base. I think I could be wrong. So when you're talking about vertical plane, do you mean aeroplane or vertical plane as in dimension?
I think we're talking dimension.
Myself. I'll look that up.
Yeah.
I'll look that up. I'll have a research on that and I'll get back to you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Leslie's probably typing it in now, aren't you?
No, because I'm going to read the next question. Let's have a look. Lee Prendergast. Could AI already be controlling the narrative through the internet, just giving people a little nudge in its chosen direction?
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's.
I think it's playing a larger part than we think it is. To be fair, I think it's a lot of what happens on the internet. I think is probably self-generated now, and we don't understand, we don't realize. But yeah, I think it is.
On a much smaller scale. Sorry, Les, but on a much smaller scale. And you notice that you talk about something. You talk about, I don't know, I want to buy a new phone, or I want to buy this new dishwasher, and suddenly you look on your computer, your laptop, and you're seeing advertisements for phones or for washers or for something. And how does that work? We know how it kind of works, but someone's listening to us all the time, isn't it? You know, we aren't putting searches in unless I'm just imagining it. How many people in chat will have experienced that? A lot, I would think.
Well, I was talking to my mum last night about something. I'd left my phone at home on charge. I went to my mum's house and I was talking to her about something. And when I came home, got on Facebook, and the first thing came up was what we were chatting about. So I don't know how that happened, but
yeah,
my phone wasn't even in the room with me.
Yeah, so crazy. The clouds all around us.
The walls have ears, don't they, Paul?
Yeah, or could it be consciousness?
Yeah,
could it be consciousness? Yeah. Steve071, Les, you're right. If we're offered something for free, i.e., Facebook, shop loyalty cards, etc., then our retrievable information is the price to pay. In other words, we give all our information away freely to join whatever it is we need to join. You know,
it's a new currency.
We do.
That's what it is. Yeah. Let's have a look. Frazzle Bacon 33. Whoa, spooky sync time. Just open Reddit under the most powerful book you read, and Carlos Castenda book is being talked about.
Ah, there you go. Coincidence or what? Yeah. So thanks, Frazzle Bacon, crispy bacon. I like crispy bacon, don't you?
That says to me that you need to start reading it and see what you can discover within the pages. It's a nice prompt.
I think we all might have a little search for that.
Yeah. And I think people will have already noticed, Paul, number one, that you're gradually disappearing into the ether. You're getting darker and darker and darker.
Right, we've only got a few minutes left.
Let me turn the light on. I'll put.
Yeah, well, we've got less than 4 minutes.
Don't worry about it, Paul.
Oh, that looks a little bit
better.
Absolutely. We know what you look like for the last 5 minutes, and
you can see me now.
Great show tonight, Martin Abbas says so. Thank you, Martin. Thanks, Alison and Lee, for doing moderating as well. But let's leave it over to some more questions. Go on.
I was just going to say that, and at the very moment in time, I don't think there's any more questions come through, guys. No, I've got nothing.
Okay, then. Let's just have a look, see if I've got any questions here. So let's just. I will have somewhere. I know I will. So disclosure. We've only got a few minutes left. Are we ever going to see disclosure, the truth of the UFOs, these intrusions into our airspace? And it's like 3 minutes isn't really going to do any of this justice. But what are your thoughts? Don't just say no.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? I was thinking about this one on the way home in the car. I was thinking, what would I answer to this one? I don't believe they've got anything to tell us, Paul. I think they're as in the dark as we are. The thing is, I think a lot of it is sort of self-generating and cyclical. Because, so for instance, I remember when David Grush first came out and they claimed that he was the man and he was gonna tell us everything, and this whistleblower has come forward. And I've not dug into it massively, but everything I heard him say was something that somebody else had told him.
Yeah.
He's not seen anything. It's something that somebody else has told him. And Paul Hellyer was the same. You remember when they turned around and said, "Oh, this guy, he was at the top of the Canadian government and he's done this."
The Canadian Minister for Defence, weren't it?
Yeah. You listen to him. Everything he tells you is what he's heard from somebody else. It doesn't tell you any personal experiences. I don't think there's anything there. I think.
Or is it, Paul, the guys with the personal experiences? I mean, I probably should have asked this 10 minutes since. Are absolutely too terrified to speak. And I'm not saying that we're going to have disclosure. I think disclosure is just taking place. It's just evolving, if that's what we can call it. But because I'm on the same page as you, they're not telling us anything, are they?
I think what we have to again question is, I don't know, I'm sorry, because I always try and I kind of skip giving you a direct answer, but I think a lot of it's more nuanced. We have to ask ourselves what we're actually experiencing, because I think people with disclosure, I think they're expecting nuts and bolts craft, and they're expecting
an alien presence, somebody to walk up and shake hands with an alien.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think that's what's there. I think the military are far more aware of what's going on than we are. Far more aware. But I don't think that the military think it's anything to do with extraterrestrials. I think they understand probably more than we do, but I don't think they've got a good grasp on it either. I think they know something's happening, but I don't think they can control it either. And if we have got any crashed materials whatsoever, I refer back to what I said about AI and transistors and stuff earlier. Because I don't think some of the things that we see these craft do, the 90-degree turns and the splitting into three, it's not a technology. Why would a craft need to split into three then recombine again? It's not a technology. There's something else going on there. How can you have nuts and bolts crash retrieval material of something that can do that 90-degree turn split? Why the massive light shows? Why no landing and speaking to us? Why just the massive light shows and the evasion? None of it makes any sense.
It's almost like a different kind of display of what, to simplify it, what you experienced in that forest with this flitting around. We want to show you, but on our terms, on the peripheral of, we'll push you in the back in the dark. We know that the light forms are slightly different, but you're spot on. Why appear in the sky and punch into 5 and then disappear? That's not some kind of machine that strikes me that some military force are going to be able to do anything with.
It's like attention seeking, Paul, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like attention seeking. It's like some sort of paranormal narcissism.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's almost like, well, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. Now I'm gone.
And pick your camera up and we're going to disappear. And on that note, we'll just pull Les in to say good night, because 2 hours have gone, Paul. I haven't had to do anything. Les has not done a lot because you've made it easy for us. And last word from myself here. Thank you very much, Paul. Thanks, Les. Thanks, Alison and Lee and everyone in chat. And it's good night from me.
And it's good night from me.
And
thank you, guys. Good night.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay. See you all next time. Bye.